having that awareness of just like noticing when something's not working for you and then going to change it. Because it's very easy to stay stagnant or complain and like not like what you're doing, but not change it. We're human. A lot of us do that. And to change things it disrupts the status quo, so that makes things more challenging, but then they can end up being so much more rewarding too. Like, I'm so glad I did make those switches when I did.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, thank you so much for listening to this episode, but I also want you to know that you can also watch it on YouTube. Regardless if you're listening or watching this episode, I really appreciate your support. Today, I have the honor of having Katie Kleber on the show. She's an MSN RN, or Katie Kleber MSN RN, I should say. She's a nurse, educator, author, national speaker, and host of FreshRN podcast, and owner of FreshRN. So I know we're going to talk about those things for sure. And that is an online platform created to educate, encourage, and motivate newly licensed nurses in innovative ways. So that was just a little bit about you, Katie. How about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. Really enjoy coming on the show. That pretty much encompasses what I do. The main thing that I do is essentially just to support new nurses as they're transitioning to practice. I like any profession, college only kind of prepares you, and the stakes are just that much higher with a profession where you're caring for people. And I had a rough transition when I figured out literally everyone else does. I put the pieces together and decided to make a blog way back in the Tumblr days, if you remember.
Yeah,
Tumblr.
Yes.
So that was the first blog.
Okay.
And then it evolved significantly from there. So that's my jam. I'm located in Nashville area, married, 2 kiddos, coach basketball, all that fun stuff. That's my non-professional side, I guess.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, thanks for sharing that background. I know that was how we met, just at an event helping some people less fortunate. I think it was around it was like a mobile food pantry, is I guess the best way to describe it. And then we just randomly started talking, and then you said you were a podcaster, a very big podcaster, I would add, and it just went from there. And I was like, I would love to have you on the show and just talk more about what you're doing, leading in the nursing community, because I think it's really important what you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate it. I think now I'll say one of the reasons things have been successful is because I niched down pretty far to like new nurses. So like, I have a big podcast within my niche. I think there's a lot of nursing podcasts in general, but when we start talking about brand new nurses, there's only a handful that are really talking to them, and that was one of the things I didn't realize I was doing. That wasn't like a conscious thing. Like now, years later, I'm like, oh, I'm really glad I did that. The more you can niche down, the more you have your audience, while it might be smaller, they're significantly more engaged because you're solving a much more specific problem, as opposed to, let me support nurses. All nurses. And like, that's a lot. That's like 3 million or so people, and the spectrum of what they do and their problems and needs is so vast. So going for, I think there's 300,000 new grads every year. So like that's how I kind of mentally niche down. Although lately I have also been kind of expanding a little bit in helping people find the right nursing program and right nursing degree, because that is also really confusing. So I'm a little expanding outside of the new grad and pulling back to helping people before they even become a nurse.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think that's really important. And it's similar, like I do a lot of stuff with leadership, but been more focused really on the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and math. I think nursing has definitely encompassed that with a lot of the science that goes into nursing. And you're kind of talking about helping people understand like what are the different majors or areas they can get into for the program. So I'm curious, when people are, I guess, what are some things that people don't normally know coming into nursing when they're trying to decide? I think maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So there are multiple entry points. So it's not like a degree where, okay, I have to go get a bachelor's and then I start. There's multiple entry points that are confusing. And there's also a pre-step of like a licensed practical nurse or an LPN. So I'm not sure you're familiar with that.
Mhm.
They're the very similar scope of practice, but much smaller. So you could enter as that, and then you could do a bridge program to a regular nurse, and then go a bridge program to a 4-year degree. Or you can do like I did and just do a traditional bachelor's. A
Mhm.
lot of people go into nursing as a second degree. So you have a lot of people with bachelor's degrees already. They don't really want to do a whole nother 4 years. Makes sense. There's
Mhm.
more options educationally now than there were years ago. So like there's something called an accelerated BSN, where if you have any bachelor's degree from an accredited school, then you can take just nursing courses and and have a bachelor's, like a second bachelor's, and that would be in nursing. Um, so it's helping people trying to figure out their entry point. Okay, what is my budget, my time? Like a lot of people going into nursing already have families. They're not that traditional 18-year-old college student without, you know, like a spouse and kids, and heavily rooted into an area where they can't relocate. Now granted, that is a large portion too that does that, but so many go back. So, and then that's just the entry level. When we
Good.
start getting to master's level, it gets extremely confusing because you have a general master's, which is what I have in nursing education, but then the nurse practitioner aspect is extremely confusing because it's like different kinds of nurse practitioners,
Okay.
and if you got your degree and specialty to take care of people in the outpatient setting, you cannot get a job in a hospital.
Mhm.
And or you could get a double one and do both, or you could get like women's health, or you could become a midwife, like. And then there's exams you have to take to actually function as one. Then maybe you want to just go ahead and get a doctorate, because a lot of people are pushing for a doctorate now, for nurse practitioners, which is understandable. So there's just so many considerations at each step, and if you're not aware, you could be pursuing a degree that's not going to ultimately be what you want. So if you're getting you're going the nurse practitioner route, but you're like, oh, I don't want to take care of patients, I want to teach, you know.
Mhm.
Or if you can waste a lot of time and money doing it the wrong way too. So if you are not a nurse at all, you have maybe some college credit or no college. What's the fastest way for me to become a nurse? Considering the experience I have, it can be costly if you're not aware of your options. Um, so yeah, especially with how expensive college is, you need to be pretty strategic. Like, and it's getting worse and worse. So thankfully nursing is something where you're making a paycheck right away. However, like when I started, I had colleagues that went to private schools whose loan payment was more than my rent. Like, we took the same exam,
Yeah.
we have the same qualifications, we're getting paid the same amount, right? Like, I have no patient has ever said, "Where did you go to college? How many times did you take boards?" They're like, "Oh, you're a nurse.
Yeah.
I don't need the details."
Uh,
Like, so it is like, do I really want to spend double, triple than if I did a different pathway? So I'm helping people kind of navigate that and creating content to support that, right now, because it is fun helping people figure out what they like to do. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer for how complicated the nursing field is. Seems like it should be straightforward. I want to be a nurse. There should be one pathway. There is not.
yeah. No, that's fair. And I would say long-winded answers are perfect for a podcast. So I
It's true.
would say that's good. Get a just an all-encompassing view of it. I think it's interesting because, to your point, college and education is becoming more and more expensive, and just to understand that there's someone there, what they're paying back in loans was like a rent payment, and they were making the same amount of money as you are. So just going to a more expensive private nursing school does not necessarily mean that you're going to be set up better. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is now granted if you go to a private nursing school and maybe you are prepared better than somebody else might be. They you might have experiences that someone who goes to a community college for an associate's degree and then completes the online portion of the bachelor's, which is a very cost-effective way. If I could do it all over, I would do that again, or do that pathway, because you graduate high school, you do a 2-year program at a community college, which is significantly more cost effective. Those nurses tend to be highly competent, pass their boards very well, and then are very competent when they get to the bedside. And then when you start working with an employer, a lot of employers offer tuition reimbursement. So then and what all you need is the completion of the bachelor's. So it's like not that many courses, and there are things like theory, research, community health, things that were not covered in the associates. So, you have a cheaper degree overall, then you have a tuition discount, and then some employers will work with different colleges. I'm sorry, they will provide tuition reimbursement, but then will also provide tuition discounts too. So it can make a degree much more affordable and take just about the same amount of time, but you're in the workforce a year or two earlier. It's like the difference is quite drastic. So,
Wow.
or you could do 4 years at a private school, and both of you would graduate, and take the same board licensing exam, because then NCLEX, our board examination, doesn't matter if you got that 2-year degree or that 4-year degree. It's the same test.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a level playing field.
It is. Now, the only difference is if you do have the 2-year degree, larger hospitals, more prestigious research institutes will prefer the bachelor's prepared nurse. But if you do come in and say, hey, I have a plan to get my bachelor's, I've already enrolled in an RN to BSN completion program, that can work. But there are some won't consider bachelor or 2-year degree nurses, but those are large hospitals who don't have a problem staffing nurses. Most hospitals are accepting those ADN prepared nurses.
Okay. No, that's really good to know. Thanks for that background. Because I wasn't aware. And definitely cost effective is the best way to go in 2025 with inflation and all the stuff that's going on. It's like,
I know. And I'm a fan of getting into the workforce faster. I personally think like the classic college experience of the 4-year degree at a university is like a little overrated. Like, yeah, that's awesome, but it's not like put me in crippling debt awesome. You know what I mean? So if I know people have gone down that 4-year degree route, and I mean, I did it. So, I mean, it can work very well, but I don't want people to go into that thinking like, this is the only way, and I have to spend all this money, and it's going to definitely take this much time. You can be a little innovative and wise with your decisions and maybe save a lot of money, not just in tuition payments, but by being in the workforce sooner and earning more instead of paying to go to school.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, if you know you want to be a nurse, that you probably want to get into the field as quickly as you can, as cost effective as you can. So going that route is important, because I know a lot of stuff I do with STEM. I talk to different people in different science majors and engineers, and I tell them the same thing, because I think sometimes, especially with engineers, like, oh, I want to go to this prestigious school, whether it's like MIT or Purdue, and like you can go there, and it's like, I don't even know what the numbers are right now. When I was going to school, it was like at least $50,000 a year before any room and board. I'm sure it's much higher now. So, and you could go to community college first and then transfer. But what I always tell them is that whether you're going to community college or 4-year route, is I go wherever you're getting the most money, whether it's grants or scholarships,
Right.
really for your undergrad degree. As long as you go to at least for engineering, ABET certified place, like that's all that matters. You get the grades, and you get the experiences.
Yeah.
You can talk about it, and that's it.
And the nice thing, if you do the 2-year community college thing and then you transfer to the 4-year degree, that's where your degree comes from. Like, it's, you know what I mean? That's what you could put that on your resume. You got the 2-year degree, but really what they care about is where you got the 4-year degree from. And, and I actually did that. I did 2 years of community college first before I transferred, and I played basketball, and it brought down my tuition. Well, actually I didn't have tuition for that, but like, I was able to transfer into this nursing program with all of my prerequisites covered. And had I been on that at that 4-year school all 4 years, it would have cost significantly more. But my BSN is from, Iowa Wesleyan. So it's like, yeah. I also, when I was at the community college level, all your professors are the people who have the PhD in the subject. Like when I did spend 1 semester at a large state school when I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So my first semester out of high school, I went to a state school, and, it was not private school expensive, but it was still like, I'm paying $15,000 to not know what I want to do. And I'm being taught by TAs who are not experts in their field. And I'm like, what am I doing? So I was like, let's pull this back. Let's hang out for a second. So I came home and I went to the community college at home to just like get the gen eds done. And then I played basketball the next year. But that and then I get into the community college. It's like, oh my gosh, you're the PhD. You're teaching me in a classroom of 20 people. Wow. I can talk to you, and you can I can come to your office hours, and you actually have time for me. And not saying you don't have that at the university, but you're at a large university, you're going to be having most of your FaceTime with TAs who are not, honestly, they're not subject matter experts like the professor is. So that was kind of a surprise to me. Like, wow, I feel like I got like a really good education at this community college. Now, granted, it was a very good community college, but I'm definitely a proponent of cost-effective, time-effective ways to, get your education and enter the workforce.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good example. And definitely I want to talk more about even how you got into all of this, because we'll definitely get to FreshRN. But before that did you always know you wanted to be a nurse or be in the healthcare field? Like, talk me through, like, Katie growing up, like where were you studying your sights on?
So many people in nursing school are like, I had this meaningful experience where my father was dying and this nurse just changed my life. I had none of that.
Okay.
I do not have a profound story for you. So like I said, I was at that state school. I thought I wanted to be an elementary education teacher. Like I wanted to be like, kindergarten, first grade, something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm taking these classes and hating it. But I'm realizing I like to teach and I like medical stuff. Maybe I just take the nursing prerequisites, see what I think. So I took anatomy and physiology, loved it. I took a medical terminology, loved it. And I just was like, all right, I'm just going to keep doing this. And I'm an extremely practical person. And I was like, I know I'm going to get a paycheck right out of school.
Yeah.
Even if this isn't like the perfect job fit for me, I will have a bachelor's degree and job security. So that is how I got into nursing. But then I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And then when you get to the point of competency, and then you get from competency to mastery, and then you can really help and teach other people, it was like, oh, I really love this, because the patient is so appreciative of your care, and then the student or the new nurse you're teaching is just so thankful. Oh, I've never had someone explain that to me. And the new nurses all have so much pressure on them. And it's just so nice to be able to be the person who alleviates that and instills confidence in them. So that's how I kind of got to the point of like entering nursing and just kind of slowly was taking steps and then really realized, yeah, I really like this. We're going to do this. This is cool. And then I got into the first job, really, really enjoyed it. I thought I wanted to be a neonatal ICU nurse, like the little babies. And I didn't get that job. And I don't know why in the world I thought I could get that job. Like I had no baby experience, just sounded like a good idea. And I worked on a cardiovascular step down unit and just loved it. I didn't think I'd love geriatrics, but I love taking care of Mima. And I don't want to take care of kids. I have children, but like, I don't want to be clinically responsible for them. And it's I just feel a lot better when I'm taking care of elderly people. And then I ended up working in the neurosurgical intensive care unit, and I realized I like neuro too. So, but what I really love is the teaching aspect of it. So, so that I started the blog 2013. So just 2 years after becoming a nurse, because I know, because I learned so many things on the fly that I was like, why did I learn this on the fly? This seems like this should have been written down somewhere. We just like mention this to each other. Somebody write this down and give this to the next new person, which is why I started writing like Tumblr posts. And then they kept getting shared a lot because a lot of people needed it. And every year you have a new crop of new grads. So that it just kind of snowballed with the progression of the platform based out of a very real need.
That's really cool. Just how it seemed like it was definitely a progression for you.
Yeah, because you'll meet people who say, I want to be an influencer, or I want to do, I want to have this massive website that does X, Y, and Z, or whatever it might be. Mine was just like, oh, I'm meeting a need. All right, how do I get better at meeting this need? All right, what's the next step? Because now I can't do this all by myself, and I can't answer emails all day and not get paid for it. Like I can't physically do that. And so it's snowballing and stuff, and realizing, oh wow, like this is turning into a business. And so I just kind of fell into it. But it is a different kind of approach into it. I did not lean into it with intention of starting a business. I had to create structure around it to enable me to continue to help people in a way where I wasn't like burning myself out.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I think that's really good, because I think oftentimes we could think that we want to do something, and then we come across something else that we are more passionate about. Kind of like what you were saying, that you wanted to do more elementary education, and then you realize, okay, actually, I'm really passionate about something in the medical field and with nursing. But then you wanted to learn more about that, and then that just kind of built on it.
Yeah, I think having that awareness of just like noticing when something's not working for you, and then going to change it, because it's very easy to stay stagnant or complain and like not like what you're doing but not change it. We're human, a lot of us do that, and to change things it disrupts the status quo, so that it makes things more challenging, but then they can end up being so much more rewarding too. Like, I'm so glad I did make those switches when I did. Because you enjoy it so much more. And you kind of craft your own dream career in a sense, where it's, when you have the internet and you have the ability to like go online and meet various needs, whatever that might be in someone's industry, in a creative way with your own like authentic touch to it, not this sterile AI thing, but like a human is here telling you and encouraging you. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the authenticity is really key, And I could tell that it was probably coming through in what you were doing when you were just making those Tumblr posts, and people were looking for it. And then you saw the need, and then you just kept doing more and more of it.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, at what point, because I know you're doing the blog with Tumblr, and I know you still have a blog now or newsletter. When did you add on the podcast? Like, how did that come about?
So let me give you the highlight reel of adding the assets.
Yeah.
So I was doing Tumblr a lot, and let me tell you, those early Tumblrs were a little too spicy for the professional world. We're glad Katie matured because
Hashtag growth.
yeah, growth. I have grown, but like, so but they were getting shared a lot, and I was, you make spicy, funny nursing, because nursing's like, things happen. Anyway, I don't want to dig myself into a hole there. My friend, who is much better with tech and the internet things, gosh, I sound so elderly, but she's like, you need to have your own website. Like, don't have Tumblr own this. You need to have your own website. So I was like, oh, literally never thought of doing that, which was good because Tumblr just like fell off after like a year or two later, to be honest.
Yeah.
But so I did my own website, and then I realized, wow, I'm getting some good traffic, unintentionally, not optimizing for anything. So then I figured out I'm going to self-publish a book. I'm going to take my top 10 blog posts, because at that point I was spending so much time. I was like, I need to be able to be compensated in some capacity, because I'm working full time at the bedside, and I come home and write emails and posts, and I'm exhausted. So I was trying to think of some way that I could help people with a cost-effective but meaningful product. So that was my first book, Becoming Nursey, and I learned how to self-publish. That was 2013 or maybe 14 when that one actually came out.
Okay. So
And
it's
then
called Becoming Nursey.
yes, Becoming Nursey, from code blues to code browns.
Okay.
How to take care of your patients and yourself. And that thing sold so well. I did an interview with somebody who was trying to do ads, right? And they wanted to do something. This is a little side story. They wanted to do hey, what if we gave away a free chapter of your book or something? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting idea. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to do really well. And this chick goes, well, I mean, I don't think it's going to pay off your loans or anything, but it's pretty decent. And I was like, okay, well, ma'am, not only I paid for a lot of loans. So it was the equivalent of. So I was just like, that was such a win for me.
That's
But
awesome.
so that book did really well. People started giving it away at nursing pinning ceremonies, buying 30 copies and 50 copies.
Wow.
It's still on Amazon. It's got 700 reviews. It's
Wow.
crazy. Yes, I'm yeah. So then that led to a book deal with the American Nurses Association. So I was like,
That's a
hey,
big deal.
right? I'm this BSN prepared, bachelor's prepared nurse who's just getting a little bit of a following online, really not knowing what I'm doing. And through one of these partnerships I had with, was that an advertiser? I was a contributing author for a nursing website. They sent me to a conference, and one of the guys there introduced me to the ANA publishing person and gave her a copy of my book, the self-published one, and she read it on the airplane home and messaged us and said, we gotta do something here. So I said, well, what we could do a second edition, and I got 2 more ideas. So I got 3 titles published through the ANA.
Wow.
Really quickly, right after, or not quickly, over the next year or 2. And then I'm getting to the point. Yeah. I was crazy. I don't know how I did that. And that's also when, what was it? What was Twitter's live video thing called?
Oh,
It starts with a P. What was that?
I know what you're talking about, and I talked
It's
about
you could do
on...
lives.
Yeah.
Well, whatever that was, if that comes to your brain, please tell me. I
Yeah.
can't remember what it was. But I started doing lives
Yeah.
before TikTok live, before any other lives were a thing. That was the only one. You're looking it up. I appreciate it.
I am.
And so those would do really well.
Periscope.
Periscope.
I got it before I typed it in, but yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Respect. So I did Periscope. And then that was when it was like, oh, then you had to like download it and then put it on YouTube
Sure.
and you couldn't do it at the same time. You know? And those were doing really well. So I had a friend near where I lived who was a sound engineer. And I was like, if I rent a podcast studio and get another nurse, will you do all the podcasty things? Because this was before there were apps, and this was 2016.
Oh yeah.
Like people didn't have real nice cell phones with that you could record a podcast on a cell phone with a good mic. Like that was like iPhone 7 days, you know?
Yeah.
Me and a coworker sat down in a podcast recording studio in 2016 for 12 hours and recorded 12 or so episodes. And he edited them all for me and I put them up and they did really well. And then I was like, well, I got to keep going. I got to keep doing it. And so that just unfolded. The whole time the blog is a thing. And that's kind of my like cornerstone of my platform is my blog. And as that connects to my email list, that's how I connect best is through email. And then after that, it just continued like growing. I ended up realizing, hey, I could write my own courses. So in 2018 is when I released my first course. It was some little $35 thing on Teachable. Not sure if you're familiar with Teachable. So it's just a learning management system, you know, like Kajabi or like one of those. And it did really well. Like because nobody's making
theme here.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like, okay, I did a little course on here's what you should know as a brand new neuro ICU nurse. Very niche, very like, here is how you don't get yelled at by a neurosurgeon at 3 a.m. You know, like that kind of stuff. That's not going to be in your textbook, you know, like that kind of stuff. Or like my like rough around the edges explanation of the pathophysiology of like subarachnoid hemorrhages or something like that. And that's what like, oh man, that makes sense to me now that you said it like that. So I did a neuro course, I did a cardiac course, and then I did like a general nursing course. And then they were doing so well, I just like kept improving upon them. And now here I have 10 or 12 courses that I have connect on my website and everything that are my clinical expertise. But then other like more professional development ones. How you be a good charge nurse, how to precept other nurses, critical thinking, like that kind of thing. So that has been a large aspect of my business, my time, and my teaching. So the podcast really supplements those. And that's where I can interview other nurses or other thought leaders and can get their perspective on different things. Like I just interviewed someone about nursing and AI. It was very interesting.
Wow.
And yeah, interviewing a president of a nursing school and like that kind of stuff to help people now I'm like, oh, let me help people try to find the right degree. So that's kind of going to be my focus, but it has evolved a lot over the last 12 years,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy, but yeah, it's been quite the journey. And the podcast is a piece of, it's like the podcast, the blog, courses, email list, and then a little bit of social media. I'm getting too old for social media. It changes, like Vine just left.
Oh yeah. I'm sad about Vine leaving.
I know, right? And then TikTok shows up, and then Instagram like does the TikTok thing, and it's just like, I don't want to keep up with all this. Is too much. I will be the old lady that will eventually probably just get cited on AI, and you'll click on me there. I don't know, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, like I think one of the reasons that there has been like success is I've been trying to not try to be the best at everything. I'm not gonna have the best YouTube. I am not gonna have the best TikTok. I have presence there a little bit, but it's like I have a focus on being really good with blog posts and free opt-ins, and then really good on email. And then if you buy a course, I'm going to give you way more than what the price tag is. Like I want to under promise, over deliver, and really dive deep into those aspects. And then, yeah, if I can get some traffic and some eyes on me from social media, that's like icing of the cake. But if I were to like, okay, I need to be the best on YouTube, and this it is exhausting, and it's constantly changing. And if you try to like keep up with all of it, you just will not make meaningful progress in the things that are important to you, because you're just spread too thin. And for so many of us who have online platforms, it's often just you, right? Like you may have an assistant or something, but the vast majority, it's like I'm doing literally everything. I may contract out for things, but so you have to like be kind of cognizant of not driving yourself into the ground, because burnout is very difficult to claw out of as an entrepreneur. So
yeah, burnout is so real. It's easy to do because there's so much stuff you want to do, and you don't want to let down your audience, so you want to be everywhere all at once. But I like what you were talking about, really understanding like what your focus is with the blogs and the email lists, even when you're doing with the courses as well, is that even talking about the podcast as the icing on the cake. I would say it's really large icing for most people, but it's good. I love it.
Yeah, I've started getting into, well, this is what I started to do, is like get into bulk recording. Like, so like right now I recorded the other day, and then I'm getting my recording schedule for the next 2 weeks, and I am just gonna like bulk record my solo episodes that are like very informational, and then put my interviews there, and then I connect those to my blog posts to enhance that SEO, so that it's not like, oh, I just spent however much time doing this podcast that it's not, there's no way for me to monetize, especially when I started doing this in my early 20s. I didn't have kids. I was married, but like, it's like when you get like older and you've got so many more responsibilities, like you realize how like, okay, I gotta be very strategic with how I spend my time. And well, I love it. It's not a hobby, just like any job is. Like, I love nursing, and it is not a hobby. I'm not going to go do that for free. And what the big thing about, like, I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, and specifically those in helping industries, teaching nursing, that kind of thing, there is this guilt to like make money, like really, like I know nurse entrepreneurs who have spent so much time free without doing anything to earn something to offset that, and they just burn out so fast because people will like continue to ask questions and have needs and want things, and it's like, okay, I can't just do this for time. Like there's got to be a limit here. And I think I interacted with some really wise people early on that was like, you're providing a service, you're providing some valuable stuff, and you're not like gouging people. Like, it's okay to earn money off of the stuff that you do like that. Don't feel guilty about that. And the burnout is something where with entrepreneur stuff and being leader in leadership, you do kind of find these things that you get really excited about, and then you just like go nuts with them. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired now. Like there was a topic I was really interested in, or whatever. Maybe it is like a podcast thing, or maybe it's this new sub niche, or you do a course or whatever, and then you just go all in on it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Like it's so easy to hyper focus, because when you have a regular job, they'll tell you what you need to do. When you have the complete freedom to spend as much time on something you want, you have to have some good boundaries with yourself. Like, wait a minute. I spent 5 days creating a PDF that should be free. What am I doing? Let me have some self-awareness here. Okay, I can't charge for this thing. Like, so I think that helps with burnout and just a high level of awareness and knowing when you need to step back and take a little break.
Yeah, no, the self-awareness piece, that's huge. I think it's definitely a continual process, because I think you get caught up in, because when you're in helping industries, like you said, is like, I want to help, I want to do all these things, but you have to have those boundaries in place. And I think that's something I knew about, but I'm like being more intentional about over the last couple of years, even the last year. Because even with podcasting, I really enjoyed it. And then at one point, I really technically had like 2 different podcasts, because I was doing, the other one was shorter, it was like 6 minutes, but it was also every week. But I did that like for 33 weeks in a row. But
that's impressive.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've done anything 33 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I don't know how I did that. I mean, it was fun, it was good. At the end of the day, I was like, okay, what am I trying to get out of it? And it was like, is it really providing what I'm trying to do? I was like, okay. Because at some point I was like, maybe I want to be become like a YouTuber, and it was like shorter, so that was perfect for YouTube. But then I was like, no, that's not really what I want to do. Like, I want to have a presence for sure, where people can see me and find me. But it's more so I'm all about building the connections, building those relationships, because of what I do, more so on the speaking and coaching side of things, just having people connect with me there.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think when you think about, like, I think one of the reasons some of the stuff that I've said resonates is with the helping industry and with any of our professions, honestly. Like, you get whatever job it is that you have because you enjoy it, hopefully, right? Like, and nurses and teachers and engineer, whatever, you're doing something you enjoy, and you want to do a good job. And I think it's very easy to over deliver and think, like, I think the boundaries aspect of, like, hey, when you're an employee-employer relationship, that's a business partnership, even if it's within a helping industry, and you're providing a service of educating the students, providing appropriate care to patients. That's the service I'm providing, and you're giving me money for that. And having that, like, framing, I think, has been something that's resonated with people, because nurses tend to, and I don't know about your industry, but they tend to just give, almost as if the employer is a family member that they're doing all these favors for, staying late, switching shifts, working extra. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's not the nurse's job to staff the hospital. That's the employer's job. And if we let ourselves continue to be exploited, we're just going to go all the way down into burnout. Like, and we're leading the way because we can't say no. And I think that's a really important thing, to know when to say no. And that isn't necessarily conflict. It's just declining something. And we can't even have to do that to ourselves when we get excited about something, or I need to tell myself no, because this is not, I am driving myself down the highway to burnout, and I need to tell myself to press on the brake, reassess. It's like that. What am I good at and enjoy? How can I make some money from it? And whatever those little, like, overlapping aspects are, because there are passion projects, and I think people should do those. But if that's taking up full-time hours, what is happening? We don't have that much time in our lives. We need to earn money to, function. So I feel like that's always a moving target too. You're never going to be at the point where you're like, yep, I've got the perfect balance. Like, no.
No, I agree. Because we talk about work-life balance, and I don't really believe it's a balance. I think it's more about prioritization, and making sure your priorities are in the right place, because sometimes there might be some things you're working on, it might be longer hours, but it shouldn't be normal. It shouldn't always be like that. And there's some stuff that come up with family or friends, like milestone stuff that you don't want to miss. You want to be there for. So it's really understanding what your priorities are, and also taking the time to reflect to make sure that, okay, I say this is my priorities, but does my calendar, what I'm doing, actually reflect that? Or am I just going and not actually realizing that I'm not actually prioritizing what I think I am?
You know, that reminds me of a very clear nursing parallel. Prioritization is something we have to learn because there's such a large volume of tasks to be done in a 12-hour shift, right? So one of the key things that nurses have to learn is how to prioritize. But if you're not intentional, not aware of that, you will just go from request to request all day. And who needs this? Who needs this? Who wants this? Who wants this? And then you are not in charge of your own time. You are not saying, wait a sec, hold on, I need to see what's most important for my patients. You're just going from whatever the next person tells you to do. And then you find yourself 6 hours into your shift and you haven't done the things you should have done in the first hour, you know? And I think that's such a parallel to life, is like, I'm just going from what this person needs and that this person needs and what this person needs. And then it's like, wait a sec, am I doing anything that I want to do? Like, or that is important to me? There's an exercise that I've done with my husband where we have, you just Google like a list of like personal values and you circle like 4 or 5 that are important to you. They're going to be different with your spouse or, just doing it solo. And then you think, what are things that I can do this year or this whatever time frame, this quarter, this month, this week, where I feel like something that I'm doing is consistent with one of those values, and that way you're like intentionally doing things that actually do really feed your soul and are not like, just going from work event to kid event. You're like, you have to be intentional to say, hey, I'm going to spend this time doing X, Y, and Z. I don't care how many 6-minute podcasts I've got to do this week or how many PDFs I need to write. I'm going to go do this charity thing or go play pickup basketball or go whatever it is, or go on this walk. I don't know, whatever it is that aligns with your values. But I think that that's a good way to have like a North Star compass of like, okay, I might get swayed into this and swayed into that, but I will come back to this like middle ground of the path that I'm walking, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely understanding your values is key. I really like that. So we've been going for a while. I want to make sure if there's anything that we haven't talked about, either for yourself, FreshRN, what it looks like for nursing, just anything you want to talk about as we wrap things up.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any nurses or if anyone listening knows a nurse or knows someone going into nursing school, I've got a lot of resources that hopefully could make it less terrifying and make them feel more supported as they go through it. So, my website, FreshRN.com, just encourage anybody to get on the email list, which you can do right on the homepage. And you'll get weekly tips, tricks, and encouragement. I have a whole catalog of different courses that also help nurses prepare for the bedside. And even those of you who have been nurses, if you've been a nurse for a long time and you took a leave of absence and then you're going back and you're like, what are they doing these days? You can check those out, and definitely stay up to date on the blog. I've got all these posts out that I'm very excited about to help people navigate picking out a degree and an educational pathway. And I'm working on this week, that's my thing I'm like hyper focused on, is a big resource hub for degrees and programs. So just encourage people to check those out and get on the email list.
Awesome. No, that's really good. Because just the fact that what you're doing really focus on new grads and making sure they understand it, and even what you're doing now with the different degree programs, I think that's really critical, because I think a lot of times, whether people go straight into nursing from high school at 18, or maybe they're transitioned to it later in life in their 30s, 40s, whatever, there's a lot of things that you don't really know, and to have you to be able to provide that is super helpful.
And I like to do the thing where I want to answer the questions you're too nervous to ask in front of maybe the admissions person or the preceptor at your job or your nursing professor. Like, you can ask me the stupid questions or the quote stupid questions. Like they're not like, this is difficult and challenging to navigate. And usually when people ask a good question, they're often the most basic ones that nobody explained it to them. Like nursing students go into the clinical environment and people just assume someone at some point explained to you how to use certain things. And you're walking around and you're like, I don't know how to use that. I don't know how to use that. I don't want to look like I don't know how to use that. So that's kind of my jam. Is like, I'm going to explain to you at home how you can navigate this and feel confident when you're actually there, and feel confident if you're talking to your admission advisor, or if you're like, want to call a school and say, hey, I'm confused about, you're approved by the state of whatever, but are you also accredited, and what's your NCLEX pass rate? And like, feel like, okay, these are reasonable questions. That's my thing. Like, is it reasonable? This is a very reasonable ask, but there are some unreasonable ones, and I want to make sure you know those before you like, jump in. So yeah, that's a little bit of my FreshRN brand, is to support people in asking the questions they're too scared to ask, because there were so many that I was nervous to ask.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're helping. You're being the resource that you wish you had when you were coming in.
Exactly. That's my mentality, is like, if this would have been helpful to me, like, I want to create what I wished I had, so that those people who are taking my courses or my email list or whatever are starting miles ahead of where I was. And that just speaks to, okay, you can do some great things if you don't have to look like an idiot for 6 months like I did. Think of the possibilities.
Oh man. But yeah, Katie, it's been really great having you on the show. Just the energy you bring, the authenticity. There's no surprise why you have such a big following within FreshRN and what you do for nurses, people who are trying to learn more about it, even be able to check out some of the episodes. And I think, even though it's geared towards nurses, some of the stuff you talk about, just like with dealing with complicated people. I know there's one episode I watched that there was one you're talking, like when you're taking a taking
report.
Taking it. Yeah, exactly. And I think that can be applied to other people as well. So I would encourage people, even if you're not a nurse and maybe you've never thought about going into nursing, to check out her podcast. I think it's really engaging. I think your personality definitely comes out in your show, and it's really cool.
It is eye-opening for people who are not nurses to like, what do they do and think about. And so yeah, that would be, and I think that would be an interesting listen if you are not a nurse, that's for sure. Yeah. And especially if you go back, all the episodes are evergreen. So if you go back to episode 1, like, we talk about very highly clinical things that are, I don't know, there's some interesting stories in there. I think that non-nurses would definitely enjoy.
There you go. So it's the FreshRN podcast. And then, Kate, is there any way you want people to stay connected with you?
Yes, if you just go to FreshRN.com and you sign up for that email list, you'll get a nice little welcome sequence, give you links to all the important things, and then you'll get a weekly email, so we can stay connected, and with highly impactful stories from the bedside, advice, ways I made an idiot out of myself, so you can get a little laugh out of it and then learn something, so you don't have to do the same thing. So getting on the email is absolutely best way to connect. I am on various social media platforms. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I do post all my podcasts. I do post on YouTube. I do YouTube lives sometime as well. And then I do have a Pinterest. Is that all of them? Is that all the things?
I think that's all of them.
All of them. So whatever your jam is, but I'm the most active with email and like the podcast, blog, and YouTube. Is that it?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. For those of you watching, you should have seen them come across the screen, the different ways to stay connected with Katie. If you're listening, just go down to the show notes, click on the best way. I think that the best way for her is definitely the email list. But if you're like, I really love Twitter or X or TikTok, go for it.
You want to see my beautiful face, you can get on YouTube, but I don't know if that's necessary.
But yeah, Katie, it's been really incredible having you on the show. Thanks for taking the time. I know there's always something you can be doing as a mom and a wife, and what you do at FreshRN for so many people across the country and really the world. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And for those of you that turn the audience, I know you got something from Katie's story, and really what we talked about, just being open to different things as they come up, and being exploratory, and try not to get stuck in different things. And if there are there's multiple ways to do things. Seek out mentors, seek out people like Katie that are doing the thing, so you make sure you can kind of avoid those pitfalls, and you can continue to do that, continue to grow. You can truly be incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.